Well, here we are, Brenton. Fantastic to be here with you today.
As always.
Talking about ServiceNow and Avantra. What could be more exciting for us to be talking about today?
So I think the phrase is a match made in heaven, someone said.
I like it. Well, look, I was kind of reflecting. Obviously, there's been a lot of news in the UK around the year that was. It's been nearly... well, not far off a year to the day since we had our first lockdown in the UK. And what a year it's been, eh? Who would have thought about it? This time, well, it was probably just over a year ago, you and I were out visiting clients together and getting on planes.
I was just thinking that actually, I actually firmly believe we had like discussions over, this will just be a quick flash in the pan, over a couple of beers. Kind of the last time definitely the last time I was traveling was that trip. And, I don't think anybody foresaw the transformation in our day-to-day lives from a work perspective, but also from an operations standpoint, just in the industry, how people have had to change and transform the way they do even the most basic things. Compared to how they used to do it. It's absolutely incredible.
But you're absolutely right. And I think, I was talking to actually another large enterprise customer, and they kind of prided themselves on, all the disaster recovery, business continuity planning, and all the different scenarios they'd worked through in terms of, terrorist attacks and, data center outages. And I don't think anyone had foreseen a scenario like this that was international. So this idea of, we'll move our resources to a different availability zone, or we'll turn on our offshore team who can support us. Suddenly to have no options internationally, no travel, supply chains in major disruption, and
the length of time as well. I mean, even if you did have, hey, listen, if our main area was out of commission for 2 weeks, some other geography could pick it up. Nobody was thinking along the lines of years. Hey, I'm not going to be able to go to the manufacturing plants in China or wherever it is for an entire year. I mean, nobody was planning like that. Nobody.
You can't, right? You can't plan for these things. And then I think there's also the people aspect in that, everyone thinks about disaster recovery, business continuity planning around how do we keep the business going? But what if the people aren't able to work in the business? They can't work from home. People get sick and they're completely uncontactable. I don't think anyone really planned for that. So, look, what a year. 12 months on in the UK, we're still in lockdown. Europe's going back in. Hopefully we're starting to come out of it in some parts of the world. But, I think, it's a good moment to reflect on the year that was. And I think one thing it's definitely done is just shone a spotlight on how important it is to have resilient IT systems to support the business. And I think, especially in the SAP world, we've been talking about this idea of digital transformation and actually supporting the big visions that companies have. But actually, let's not lose the sight of, keeping the business running, supporting the day-to-day operations. And, one thing this whole pandemic, I think, has done is just shone a spotlight on what's working well, maybe what's not working well, but more importantly, what could we do better? And I think that's really what we're here to talk about today. So,
completely. And I'm always reminded as well of, they always say that the most severe disruption to any business is when the thing you haven't thought of or the thing you depend upon that is so simple is suddenly not available. There's nothing more disruptive than this. I mean, we know this even from an IT landscape perspective, that this is it. But now we're talking about the IT landscape, the human. So it's the people, process, technology, right?
Exactly.
Usually you would have had an outage on one of them. You'd say, we have a technology issue or somebody's out of the business or whatever the case may be. But now we're talking about how do you account for that kind of level of disruption across all three? And this is exactly the topic, as you say.
Absolutely. I think, one thing in talking to customers now, I think, that previously maybe they paid lip service to, okay, if we have an outage, what's the real cost to the business? I think now if there is a system outage for some organizations, it's had board level visibility because it's been a board level issue. Sometimes these companies not only are fighting for survival, but actually, in certain industries, they've had a huge jump in demand on their services. The move to online retail or, online delivery, or, supporting online delivery and ordering, etc. So, at the same time as supporting business as usual, some of these industries have just had demand go through the roof. So
hypergrowth.
Certainly what I think I've heard is people are more acutely aware of the business impact and cost of not delivering. And I think that's certainly come through in the people I've spoke to. And by the way, the managed service providers that we talk to as well, I think equally true, because they're just one step behind. They're supporting these clients, they're supporting these businesses. So they've seen it both ways. They've been under pressure to demonstrate they can continue to operate.
And if you take some of our large enterprise customers, who are running hundreds of systems, it's like if one of them wants to grow at the rate we're talking about here to match the demand that they're seeing, that's one thing. When you're talking about MSPs and especially some of the ones we're working with at the moment, they're just trying to stay ahead of 10, 15, 20, 50 customers who are going through that growth. And putting in place the processes, the automations, and a resilient, obviously from where we're coming from, a resilient platform that can help them with that growth and scale to match that growth. And that is top of mind for the boards of these companies, more so than I've ever seen in my entire career.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to one MSP, actually local to you in Ireland, Brenton. So, but for them, one of the challenges was not just being able to continue to deliver services, but to demonstrate and give confidence to all their customers they can continue to deliver. And that visibility, that transparency is kind of an interesting question, because sometimes, these are remote delivery centers, sometimes the processes, the platforms, they're not clearly visible to the end client. The outcome is,
yes,
and
of course,
obviously if they don't deliver, then the risk sits with their customer. You can't outsource the risk. But, as a managed service provider, how do you instill that confidence with your clients that you've got their back, you've got this covered, that, if they want to scale up 10 times at short notice, we can do that. If there is an outage, we're going to be onto it so quickly, and we can make sure that, it's not going to impact the business. So,
and actually, I think, again, from those conversations, I'm hearing from those managed service providers that they are, the nature of the RFIs, the RFPs is changing for them, because they have to demonstrate, hey, here's our roadmap for how we're disrupting ourselves to deliver a better service for you. Here's how we're embracing automation so that you can embrace automation. It's obviously there's the nuts and the bolts. There's the how many systems, how many people, how many geographies, what SLAs. That's always there. But now there's a hyper focus on the intangible benefits that are being brought by their investment in these areas.
It is interesting. I think, you raise a really good point here, because I think we certainly hear quite often this aspect of transparency. If I'm a managed service provider, how can I be transparent with my clients and show them what I'm doing while still, staying on top of what I need to in my own house? So being able to display very clearly in real time, how they're delivering against an SLA, for example. And having joint goals that they're working to in terms of service delivery. So I certainly hear that as a very common theme. The second thing is, if I reflect on automation, where maybe a year and a half ago the focus was around productivity improvement. How can I reduce the manual effort and deliver the same level of service at maybe a lower price point? I think in the last year that has changed quite markedly to, actually, automation is around delivering quality of service, reliability of service, smarter service. It's that dependability, it's the trust, and that evidence-based way of showing that you can actually continue to deliver the top quality of service. So it's interesting. It's moved from a kind of a cost reduction theme to a service optimization or a value add. And that happened.
But what I'm interested in there, Simon, actually, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm actually asking the question, which is, you say it's less of a focus on cost. Is there still a focus on cost while trying to achieve these service optimizations, or is there an understanding that everyone needs to optimize for a while and deliver on the automation promise, on the AI ops promise, and not so much focus on, hey, I need you to get this cost lower, or I'm going somewhere else? Is it both, or is it? Which way is it going?
It's interesting. I mean, look, the benefit's still there. Let's not shy away from the fact if you're automating things, then you're reducing manual work.
Sure.
That does two things. It reduces the people aspect and potentially the cost, but it also reduces the demand for people. So in a surge or hyper scaling environment, you might not have the people available. So actually the benefit is around ability to deliver. It's not around saving cost.
Yeah.
The same around delivering a better level of service, the quality. That tends to be the trigger point why people are doing it now. That's what we're finding. It's probably just, people still seek all the benefits, but if I look at the top three, cost isn't number one. I think quality of service is number one, and scalability is number two. And that changed really quickly. It's still driving towards the same technology solutions, but the reason people are doing them is subtly different now. And I think that's what I've seen has changed.
Fascinating. That's kind of what I expected you to say, but I wasn't sure if that's actually what we're seeing in the market. So that's really interesting. So how does ServiceNow play into all this, and how does the ServiceNow and Avantra integration play into, I suppose, this scene we've set here, which is where we've come to in the last 18 months?
It's good context, isn't it? Because ultimately, when I'm having conversations, I'm sure you're having very similar conversations with clients as well. We tend to get very focused on the SAP part of the business, especially because Avantra is, an SAP specific or focused solution. But there's all the rest of the IT operations happening around that SAP team. And on some of these initiatives, and it particularly comes through around automation, it particularly comes through around transparency on service delivery. They go, that's great for SAP, but that's only part of what we need to do. We're doing this as an enterprise-wide IT initiative. And I'm hearing those conversations and those sort of taglines coming up more and more often. And invariably in that same sentence is, but we use ServiceNow already for this. We're orchestrating workflows with ServiceNow. Or when we do this for the rest of our IT, this is how we use ServiceNow to do this. And maybe this wasn't quite as common 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe they were talking about a multitude of vendors, but to ServiceNow's credit, I think more and more of the times we're hearing ServiceNow as the platform of choice for the IT operations team. But the bit that's always perplexed me is, why didn't these things happen in parallel? When they did it for the rest of IT, why didn't they do SAP at the same time? Why is SAP resisted this way? It's special.
And I use the word special in the kindest possible way. I've been in the SAP world for over a decade. I know exactly what you're talking about. At the end of the day, because SAP was core to some of the financials, logistic, manufacturing, whatever the case may be, it's the core system that makes up your business. And so it was always special. It was always maintained differently, and it always required a high level of skill just to keep the lights on. And hats off to all the SAP professionals out there who are running their own landscapes. I mean, it's not easy, and it's never been easy. But I do think something has changed. Whether you hear SAP themselves speak, whether you hear what the MSPs are doing, I do believe that is fundamentally shifting in the last few months. Which is amazing to see, and not just because of COVID. I think it's been a shift that's been coming for a while, as the rest of IT has kind of leapt forward and embraced, hey, let's do automation first, let's do CI/CD, let's do all of the stuff that make life easier. I think that SAP has the SAP community, not SAP the company, has realized there's opportunities here. Is that fair?
I think that's true. I think the other thing I'd add to that as well is that, maybe if you go back quite a few years, people ran SAP end to end. It was the ERP, it was the lifeblood of the business. But where we're at today in the real world is
it's best of breed.
SAP may be a key application. It may be the most important enterprise application, but it's not the only enterprise application.
Correct.
It's not the only business critical system. So, data flows are happening from SAP to non-SAP. It's happening all the time. It's probably a more integrated IT, a more complex environment now.
And that's the key word, isn't it? Integrations like that, where you're taking best of breed, some SaaS, some on-premise, whatever the case may be. The integrations become so important to maintain, to ensure that they're working the right way. and all that kind of fun stuff. So it has both the dynamic has shifted, but also the complexity has increased. And then throw the cloud in there, and it all becomes nicely complex.
Yeah, look, it's interesting, isn't it? The move to cloud, it's sometimes perceived as that this will solve all your problems, but the reality is that there's a bit of a hump to go over, isn't there? When you're running a hybrid cloud, things get more complex for a while, and they may stay more complex, for a fairly lengthy period of time. There's benefits, but let's not kid ourselves. This doesn't simplify the architecture. You talk to the IT,
especially if you lift it up from your on-premise data center and put it into a cloud. It doesn't change how you have to operate your landscape. It's just somebody else's computer.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, going back to this point around SAP special, I agree with you. And, I've not spent as many years in the SAP industry as you have, but I think, part of what strikes me is that, sure, there's architectural and technical reasons why SAP is different. Yeah, so its own language, its own unique architecture. Even just the way you manage release cycles in SAP is very different from cloud native environments. But I don't think that's the whole picture. Certainly what I see when I talk to these organizations is, you do get these silos of people. When you look at the organizational structure, the reporting lines, all goes direct to a SAP COE, and it's like a business within a business. And these people, they don't move between the teams. They don't transfer from SAP to cloud to e-commerce or anything like that. They literally stay in SAP, and they've been there, as you say, with all this great product and corporate knowledge for like 10 plus years. So you've got these organizational things that are kind of resisting change, and then you've got these technology and platform things that are kind of becoming barriers. So you take ServiceNow as an example. It's used everywhere in IT, but not in SAP. And why is this? Well, why has it managed to stay so separate for so long? Is this a problem that was too hard to solve? Is this a problem that people didn't want to solve? Were there personal agendas that were stopping it? I don't know, because naturally you'd think that these organizations and teams would come together, but it didn't happen. I think the last year has forced them together in a way.
Yes.
I keep thinking of CEO of Microsoft's quote, in the last 2 months, we've had 2 years of digital transformation. I think that's happening.
And it's completely true.
We've been trying to bring these teams together for years, but they had to come together. They were forced together in 2 months,
it's like anything. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, when you get these massive worldwide, the global events that really disrupt your operating environment, that's when innovation happens.
Yeah.
If you think back to, JFK and going to the moon and that kind of stuff, that was a perfect confluence of events and effort to bring together a complete disruption of what they thought was possible. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I'm saying we're seeing something similar right now. And so I think it's really encouraging to see the SAP world emerge. And if you take ServiceNow as an example, I mean, that's what we're here to talk about. I mean, we have customers upon customers upon customers who are now starting to say, right, how can I get rich, and I mean really rich, SAP data into ServiceNow in the same way I do with every other part of my IT landscape, so that suddenly I'm getting contextually relevant data alongside incidents so that I can make intelligent decisions about what to do next. That's the key.
It's true. And I think, let's go back to, when we first, Avantra, when we first struck our partnership with ServiceNow back in 2019, we were finding increasingly our customers were saying, okay, we've got ServiceNow, we use it for ITSM, IT service management, ticketing, etc. We'd like Avantra, or Xandria as we were then, to automatically create an instant in ServiceNow, but not just a dumb instant. Some real sensible data, so I don't know what they need to.
It's this system. This is what happened. Here's the context of what actually happened to it.
Exactly, and that was coming up, fairly frequently around. Can you do this? It's just a simple step, and we kicked off the integration, and if I'm honest, it was a pretty straightforward integration. We've still got an app on the ServiceNow store that does exactly this. Pretty straightforward, but I think what followed fairly quickly after that is, but we want to do more. And if you understand the vision with ServiceNow, the CMDB, the configuration management database, is really the heart of ServiceNow. I guess the premise is that, if you understand all the changes happening in your IT landscape, you're most of the way there to identifying root causes of issues as they arise, because majority of these issues don't just suddenly happen. They're because of a change that someone made, either planned or unplanned, and they didn't appreciate the dependency. And if you know what's changing, then you can, one, stop these things from going through that can be damaging, and two, when they do go through, identify what's caused and roll back.
And wake up the right person who caused the problem in the first place.
Yeah, stop the needless calls at 2 a.m. So, it's so obvious. Why can't SAP be part of that? Because when we have issues, sometimes we don't know if it's SAP. So, straight away, the next request we got is, can we get detailed SAP data like you've got in Avantra, populated and synchronized with ServiceNow CMDB? And we worked on that in the beginning of 2020, and that was launched fairly soon. I think that's a huge gain for our clients, because it's helping them to get the benefits of both an Avantra and ServiceNow investment. It's that 1 + 1 gives you 3, because you've already got both platforms running. All you're trying to do is to get them talking to each other. It's a no-brainer.
And this is one of the questions that does come up. So I want to make sure we touch on it very briefly, which is what's Avantra bringing to this, apart from sending the data to ServiceNow. And I think it's really worth, for those who aren't familiar with who we are and what we do, we're really hyper focused on SAP. How do we manage your SAP landscape in the best possible way? How do we bring automations to SAP? How do we give you deep insight into every corner of your SAP environment? And so as a result, because we are in the SAP system, looking at the right transactions, looking at the right information from function modules, pulling that into our system, we have that really key SAP specific, the special information that the experts know about. We have that available. And so that allows us to then flow that into ServiceNow to give the context, which allows ServiceNow to make the right determinations on, okay, actually, no, this is linked to this change. This is who we should be waking up. This is why you have a problem. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, a really good point, Brenton. I think, Avantra is really the tool that the basis guys will be using to manage that SAP environment. We've got the detail. What was lacking was ServiceNow just had the high level detail, and still today that's the one of the limitations is they know it's an SAP system, but they don't know all the things the basis guys needs to identify root cause and actually fix the issues. So I think that was a big win. So second cab off the rank was populate the CMDB with real meaningful SAP data and keep it synchronized. So when there's changes, update the CMDB, and that could be for security, change management, a whole range of different things that the ServiceNow can do. So I think that was a big win. The next one that we got is really saying, okay, context. Go back to that point that you just made, Brenton. We see everything around SAP and the full stack that SAP runs on, but we might not see everything that's happening around, say, network performance or other infrastructure or cloud management. SAP doesn't operate as an island. So to really understand the context, sometimes you need to blend data sources. So there may be other APM tools, there may be other monitoring solutions that can bring this data in. Why not bring that data into ServiceNow?
Exactly. I mean, and also if you're sitting a level above your individual network, or sorry, your individual application silos, I should say, and you've got SAP, you've got network, you've got data center connectivity and monitoring, and suddenly you're seeing, oh, my SAP system is down. Oh, but I can see actually the link to our data center is down. I'm getting that from somewhere else. Let's not wake up the SAP people. Let's wake up the data center people, because obviously we have a power failure or something. It could be something along those lines. And suddenly you're building a picture of context, which allows the system to do intelligent root cause analysis. And that's what it's all about. You know what,
it sounds so obvious when you paint it in these simple terms, but let's not kid ourselves. If it was that easy,
it's hard.
5 years ago, it's hard. But I think where we're at today is, we've got access to the detailed information in Avantra. ServiceNow has got the platform to do this. Bringing them together really does seem, as you said at the beginning of the call, a match made in heaven. And I think it is bringing the benefits of both. But once you've got the context as to what's happened, that's great. Okay, we've got an issue. You straight away jump to, we need to remediate that. Now, in the old world, this is, who do we call? Who do we get out of bed at 2 a.m?
Exactly.
But what we've had, I guess, as more recent conversations is, well, that may be happening. The first thing this person's going to do is probably do some very basic checks and actions.
Going back, we switched it off and on again.
Why don't you automate some of these initial remediations, right?
Actually, I have a great story about this one. If I could jump in for just one second. One of the customers we were working with, they had a performance issue with their system. And lots of people have heard me tell this stories a few times. I love this story. They had a performance issue every Monday morning during month end. Because guess what? The system was under heavy load. Everyone was logging on at the same time. It was just too much for the system to handle. So every Monday morning, they'd get that ping. Oh, hey, the system's under stress. We got to start kicking some people out. And what they did, they used ServiceNow for this. We ended up working with them so that they could detect the system load in Avantra. It would reach out to ServiceNow and say, hey, there's a system load on your production ERP instance. Would you like us to add some extra capacity? Would you like us to spin up an additional application server? And the only human involvement in the entire process, from load being detected to an additional application server being switched on in the cloud in this case, was it went to the budget holder for the infrastructure to approve the spend to switch on the application server.
Right. Yeah.
So it was literally out to ServiceNow. ServiceNow took care of the approvals, sent it to the right person. They hit approve. It reached back into Avantra, used our automation platform, and spun up an application server. And then after a period of time, could shut it down again after a while. But this is an example of near zero touch automation, which I absolutely love. You're only asking for approval where required. And that's a great example of some really intelligent integrations there with ServiceNow, where it's two-way. We're telling ServiceNow something, they're telling us to go and do something else. And that's fantastic.
That intelligent automation I love. What's great for me is that this is not a transformation, right? This is not groundbreaking that we're changing the way we're running automation. Really, all we're doing is we're doing the steps that real humans have been doing manually already, but we're doing it at light speed, at scale, and with minimal touch.
Right.
But it's nothing different. The risk is actually really low, because this is exactly what smart humans would do.
Well, also, actually, even quite a few of the smart humans I know and SAP professionals, they've probably automated it for themselves already. They have a script on their laptop and they just run the script.
This is true as well.
And suddenly they're now able to kind of outsource that running of the script to an automation platform, which, guess what, means they get to stay in bed, or even better, they get to free up their time to do something even more interesting. Tinker with something else that's new, tinker with another automation, and that kind of stuff. So there's huge benefits to be had there on all sides, I think.
That's a really good point, because I think we ran some research last year, and we didn't plan for it to run in the middle of the pandemic, but it turned out that we did. It was interesting. It's all around innovation in operations, and going to the personal aspect of the research. A big part of it is we need to spend more time on innovating and the exciting things that business is asking us to do. But we can't, because we're so busy doing all the stuff that we don't want to do. So
exactly,
in a way, when we talk about improving productivity, it's actually doing the more important and the more important things than it is doing less. So that's a good point.
We did a great session a few weeks ago with the analyst Josh Greenbaum. It's up on our Bright Talk channel, I'm sure. But it was one of the IT Operations Unplugged streams. And he had a very interesting perspective, which is that if you embrace this stuff and you're really looking at how you can change the game for your business going forward, it's now is the time to make those bets. It's now is the time to look at the market and say, right, if you're a retailer, when we're allowed trade again, if you're a travel agent, when we're allowed to book people on holidays again, what's the new world going to look like? What bets can we make right now, whether it be technical bets in automation, whether it be process bets or people bets? Make them now, because when you're then able to run, you're running at a whole different gear to some of your competitors who may just try and do what they were doing before, and that reality doesn't exist anymore.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm not a betting man myself, but I think what's interesting in this analogy, right, is these are low risk bets, because what we just talked about as an example is really just being smarter around what you're doing already. This is not
Correct.
completely reinventing or transforming your business. You're doing it. You're just not doing it very efficiently. The second thing is there's a risk of sitting on the sidelines and doing nothing. So, I think where we are now, we all know that the world isn't going to go back to how it was a year ago. The world has moved on and changed permanently. So, there's no place to be sitting on the sidelines going, let's just wait until we go back to normal, because that day is not coming anymore. You
Exactly.
need to. So the risk of doing nothing is actually a lot higher than people, potentially realize. Your industry could get Ubered. You could change completely and suddenly find actually, things are not going to stay the same. So I think you're right. I think Josh is right. Place your bets.
But there's also another point you made there, which I completely agree with, which is people want to start using these beneficial platforms, in the case of what we're talking about here, quickly. And as you well know, we got huge demand or requests last year during 2020, for, hey, we want Avantra as a turnkey solution in all of the clouds. We want to be able to spin it up in AWS, Azure, GCP, with a click of a button. Can you do this? Now, our platform's easy to install anyway, but the demand for this was fantastic, because suddenly people were able to self-service and say, right, I want to try Avantra. I want to prove to the business this can be useful. And they were just go click, 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 add it to their bill on their cloud provider, and they were up and running and ready to go. So I think there's also a speed with which people expect and want to be able to consume these potentially useful platforms. Yeah. So they can start to prove out these things quickly, adopt them, and move on to the next thing.
Look, totally agree. Time to value, it just comes out as, the number one question all the time. It's like, how quick will I see the benefits? And look, probably a nice segue actually into a bit of an early announcement of what's going to be coming through probably in the next month or so. We've been working really closely with ServiceNow to really develop and enhance our integration. I guess in simplistic terms, SAP enabling ServiceNow, and we will be launching a Service Graph connector for SAP, leveraging Avantra and ServiceNow, and that should be coming through next month. It's going to have huge benefits. Out of the box, we'll be able to do SAP landscape discovery in a very secure way by leveraging our agent architecture. We'll have a two-way sync with the CMDB, and it'll have all the context information, and you'll be able to do it at scale. So for very large MSPs, this is going to be a very robust way. It's the preferred way to go. So I think, in a way, this is going to be something that's going to tick all the boxes that people had. Give me a very flexible integration. I want it up and running very quickly. I want zero risk, and I want to be able to not just monitor and recognize when I've got issues, but trigger an automation to remediate it.
Exactly.
And I think we're going to be at that stage very, very soon where we can go yes, yes, yes to all the demands, in a very short time. It's going to be phenomenal. I think
I couldn't agree more. And this isn't a technical session, so I'm not going to go into any detail. But if anybody's watching who is interested in what Simon just described, the triggers from ServiceNow back into Avantra to do things, create maintenance windows, apply patches, whatever the case may be. Have a look on our YouTube channel under Mastering Avantra. We've some ServiceNow videos up there which really show the end-to-end process, and it really is fantastic. The team have done fantastic work with our counterparts in ServiceNow to get that running. It's lovely to watch, I must say.
And what's interesting, and I think this is where it's great having you engaging so deeply with our customers, Brenton, is we often don't know what these use cases are. So they keep coming up. Whether it's around moving towards more agile DevOps within the SAP world, whether it's if I've got all this data around SAP, can I use it for software asset management? Can I support my GRC solutions?
Or even the one we had last week, which was I was working with one of our large MSP customers who needed to do detection of OpenSSL, which underpins nearly every server in the world. And there's a critical vulnerability last week. They wanted to figure out which servers were out of date, where did they need to focus, and we were able to do that. And suddenly we were able to link that back to actions they needed to perform, maintenance windows they needed to create, and suddenly all of that's automated. It's just fantastic.
It's interesting, isn't it? We talked at the beginning around, the businesses that have been the winners have been the ones that have been the most adaptable, the most flexible.
Completely.
And I think, I would say, one, we're embracing that here, and I think ServiceNow is as well. But sometimes it's just putting the platform in place. We don't know what these next, use cases and requests are going to be. But if you can make it very simple and easy to accommodate, then again, you can make these available very quickly. So look, I think pretty exciting future. I think going back to, if I was in IT operations, SAP operations, what an interesting year it's been. But more importantly, how much better is the world going to be in the year ahead? I think you've got so many more options open to you. I think, some of these really hard problems to solve are getting easier and easier, and easier to do quickly at scale without big 1 or 2 year implementation projects, which that's pretty refreshing. It's a great situation to be in. So the other thing I would say, and I know we're sort of nearly up on time. Maybe we've got some questions coming in as well, but I think every business seems to operate at a different pace. Some people I talk to, they say, look, this sounds great, but we're a long way off being ready. I guess it's the peace of mind, isn't it? At some point, someone in the business may turn around and say, we need to do it, and we need to do it yesterday, whether that's someone in the IT operations team or the business, taps the SAP team on the shoulder and says, we need this like now. It's great to have that almost insurance to fall back on and say, okay, well, I know where to look. I know I can get this done quickly. Even if you hadn't thought about doing it, the fact you suddenly can, and you can do it at your own pace when your business is ready, I think it's kind of comforting in a way to know that you're not going to get caught out as an SAP professional. You've got a game plan. And
I think what you said earlier is quite key here, which is that, if you're going down the route of a modernized operations platform, it's not 6 months. It's not even 6 weeks if you don't want it to be. Like, I give an example. So we've done rollouts to thousands, and I'm talking nearly 10,000 SAP systems in months. I'm talking less than 6 months. So, if your landscape is sitting there with hundreds, 200, 300 SAP systems, that's something you can achieve in a couple of weeks. It's not difficult. It gives you a foundation that frees up your time for the inevitable tap on the shoulder. Because you mentioned a tap on the shoulder that you need to do something. Where are you going to find the time to do that? Because we're all so busy as it is. Yeah. So actually, by saying to yourself, you know what, I'm going to give myself a modern platform that solves some of my time issues, gives me back some of the time in my day, and lets me not have to worry about the daily checks, the real-time monitoring. That's all taken care of. Then you can be the person who's driving the agenda for the business. You can say, hey, now we need to look at automation. Hey, now we need to bring SAP into the fold. Let's start putting our data into ServiceNow. And you can lead that charge rather than being dragged into it, which I think is a nice place to be for anybody who's kind of led an operations team. It's always nice to be at the forefront rather than being asked to do stuff.
Maybe a challenge to put out to our industry. What if SAP was the leader here? What if SAP was the first cab off the rank and the first part of the business to adopt this, smart ops, no ops approach?
Exactly.
I mean, scary thought, right? Quite often, we find SAPs trying to catch up with the rest of IT. But, what if we could turn this on its head and actually say, we can be at the forefront of how to run complex IT operations? Yeah, I think that's possible.
Completely. I think that's it's more than possible. It's a reality if you choose to make it so. And put the tools in place, do the investigations, once you have your foundational elements and you can put them together, then it's just a journey to bring the business on that journey, to get them ready for it, and then to actually start joining the jigsaw together.
Yeah. Well, interesting times. We said that at the beginning. I think we're nearly up on time now, but I think there's been some good stuff that's come out of the last year, and I think we've got more opportunity as a kind of, if you like, an SAP operations community to drive innovation than we've ever had. Equally, I think the stakes are a lot higher. So sitting back and not doing anything probably isn't an option anymore. So I think we're living in unique times, but hopefully better times for everyone that's in this area. And look, if you'd like to find out more, as Brenton mentioned, on our Mastering of Avantra YouTube series, there's some videos that showcase some of this. We've got a regular blog and podcast. I'd encourage you to sign up. Lots of great content on there that we've done already around ServiceNow over the last year or two. So you'll get to see some more from Brenton in exactly these areas we've talked about. And stay in touch. And of course, feel free to reach out at anyone from Avantra. We're more than happy to, give you some demonstrations, explore what you could be doing, and we can certainly do that jointly with ServiceNow. So, is there anything else that you'd want to add in terms of closing comments, Brenton?
No, I think that's absolutely a good summary, Simon. The only thing I'd say is probably it's easier than you think, and getting started is easier than you think, and you can get some really, really quick wins with quite little effort in this space. So don't be afraid to ask about what can you do just to get the basics up and running to free up a bit of time or whatever the case may be. It will be easier than you think.
That's a great point, and sometimes it sounds too good to be true, but look, I generally think in this situation, it is one of the quick wins that you can go after very easily. And there's no harm in looking. If you've already got Avantra, especially, then really this is straightforward stuff. So
absolutely
great. Well, look, thank you everyone for your time. It's been great having a chat with you, Brenton, as always.
Likewise, Simon.
Around, where our industry is heading. I think we do have a pretty unique perspective, and it's great to share that with some of our customers and prospective customers. And look forward to hopefully hearing from some of the people that have joined us today.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.
Bye.